Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take all those sources, your articles, your research, all your notes, and we try to distill them into the essential knowledge you need.
Right, to navigate the world and, frankly, to maintain your sanity.
Exactly. And today we are tackling a workplace reality that I think almost everyone has faced at some point.
Oh, for sure.
We're diving deep into Robert Sutton's practical guide, The No Asshole Rule, building a civilized workplace and surviving one that isn't.
That's right. And for you listening, our mission isn't just to, summarize a book.
Yep.
We want to make it highly actionable.
Okay.
So we're extracting the key concepts and strategies, not just for leaders, but for everyone who's just trying to stay productive and sane. Sutton's core idea is, it's pretty simple.
What is it?
Getting rid of these harmful influences, this toxic, demeaning conduct, is absolutely essential. It's essential for everyone's achievement and, their psychological health. Civility, in his view, is a competitive edge.
I really like that framing. It's not just some feel-good policy, it's a business imperative.
Precisely.
So let's start with just recognizing the problem. When Sutton uses this, let's say, blunt and provocative language, what specific behaviors is he actually targeting? We're not just talking about someone being difficult, are we?
No, not at all. We are talking about sustained patterns of behavior. Sutton helps us identify these key traits that define this toxic influence. Things like arrogance, pervasive rudeness, and this is the most critical part.
What's that?
A propensity to actively demean, humiliate, or belittle other people. It's the difference between a tough boss who pushes for excellence and a destructive colleague who uses cruelty to feel superior.
That is such a key distinction. And to really get why this matters so much, we have to look at the collateral damage.
Right.
Sutton doesn't just talk in the abstract. He shows the very tangible harm with examples like Sarah.
Yeah, the Sarah anecdote is powerful.
So picture Sarah. She's a conscientious, high-performing worker. She's great at her job. But her colleague, this colleague sees her as a threat.
And starts to undermine her.
Exactly. He starts belittling her in meetings. And it's not even about disagreeing with her ideas. It's about undermining her with, passive aggression.
So she presents some complex data analysis.
Right. And the colleague just sighs loudly, rolls their eyes, and says something super dismissive like, "Oh, bless your heart, Sarah, that's a cute idea, but we're talking about enterprise solutions here."
Ugh, so condescending.
And then to top it all off, he takes credit for her successful projects later on.
And that example, it's so powerful because it shows just how insidious this behavior is.
Yeah.
It's not just a huge blow to Sarah's morale, which, obviously craters.
Of course.
It also just instantly fractures team cohesion and inevitably overall productivity just tanks.
So once you see that cost to one person, the next question is, what's the real business case for stopping this on a systemic level?
And Sutton shows this is not an isolated incident, right? It's a systemic poison with these far-reaching consequences that we can really categorize into three clear layers of harm.
Okay, let's break down those three layers, because this is where the financial justification for being civil becomes, undeniable.
So the first layer is the impact on individuals. This toxic behavior, it isn't just unpleasant, it causes severe stress, anxiety, and research has shown it can even lead to tangible physical health problems.
So we're talking a real, measurable mental and physical toll.
A heavy one, yeah.
Yeah.
Paid by innocent people. Then the second layer is the impact on teams. When one person acts this way consistently, it just poisons the whole group dynamic.
It erodes trust.
It erodes trust so deeply that people stop collaborating.
Well,
They hesitate to take risks, they start hoarding information, and they definitely stop innovating because the fear of being humiliated is just way stronger than the benefit of a new idea.
which leads directly to decreased performance.
Across the board. And that brings us to the largest scope, the impact on organizations. This goes way beyond just morale. Sutton gives this chilling case study of a top executive who just regularly humiliates his subordinates.
Creating a culture of fear.
A deep culture of fear. And the consequences of letting that go unchecked are massive. You see high turnover, which means spending huge amounts on recruitment and training. You see more absenteeism, lower productivity, and then there's the less obvious cost.
What's that?
The loss of institutional knowledge when your good people quit. On top of all that, you have long-term damage to your reputation and the risk of some very costly legal fees.
So organizations pay a steep and really an undeniable price.
They absolutely do.
Okay, so let's unpack that. If the damage is that bad, leaders need a clear path forward. What kind of practical guidance does Sutton offer organizations to translate this idea into workable plans.
Right. So this moves us from just diagnosing the problem to actually implement, and this is crucial, enforcing a solution. Sutton outlines 3 necessary tactics for a real organizational commitment.
Not just a suggestion.
Not just a suggestion. So the first step is clearly establishing policies. And this means moving beyond, some vague code of conduct. You have to clearly define what violates the rule.
Be specific.
Very specific. List things like public humiliation, stealing credit, intimidation. And you have to communicate those expectations to all employees from day one.
Defining it, I think, is the easy part. The real challenge, I suspect, comes with step 2, enforcing the rule. This is where so many of these policies just fall apart.
Especially with high performers, the superstar jerks.
Right. The people who bring in huge revenue but leave this trail of broken employees behind them. How do you handle that?
Well, that is the central challenge of the book. And Sutton argues that short-term financial gain can never outweigh the long-term organizational cost of that toxicity. Enforcement has to be blind.
So what does that look like?
The organization has to create effective mechanisms, probably driven by HR, for grievances, for fair investigations, and for implementing real, concrete consequences.
And these consequences have to be real.
They have to be. The book emphasizes they can range from mandatory counseling and negative performance assessments all the way up to termination. If your top salesperson gets a free pass to abuse people, the rule is meaningless.
And the whole culture just starts to rot from the top down.
Precisely. Which leads to the third tactic, which is keeping it alive. The rule has to be consistently reinforced through leadership action. The CEO, the executive team, they have to model the behavior.
And address violations immediately.
Immediately. It requires embedding this expectation into every single layer of the organization. Hiring, onboarding, performance reviews. So it's not just some memo that gets forgotten in a file cabinet.
That makes a lot of sense for the organizational response. But for most of us, change has to start, a bit closer to home. It's not just about pointing fingers.
Absolutely. Sutton shifts the focus to personal accountability. There's a whole part of the book called How to Stop Your Inner Jerk from Getting Out.
Ah, I like that.
It requires individuals to manage their own conduct, especially under that intense professional stress we all feel.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, think about his example of John. John wasn't a malicious guy, but he realized that when he was stressed or on a tight deadline, he would sometimes snap. He'd get dismissive and critical.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
For sure. And the knowledge he needed was all about prevention. First, he needed self-awareness, recognizing his own triggers, his own tendencies before they manifest.
Spotting the warning signs.
Yes. And second, emotional regulation became his toolkit. We're talking about practical strategies here, like a mandatory 5-minute pause before sending an angry email, or using deep breathing techniques, or just taking a short walk when you feel overwhelmed.
These are proactive steps to regain control.
Exactly. And the third point is the foundation for it all, cultivating empathy and respect. Just reminding yourself that everyone is under pressure and that treating people well is a core value, even when things are tough.
But what if you've done all that internal work and you still find yourself in an environment where, well, the jerks are in charge because the organization has failed?
That's a tough spot to be in.
Let's consider the story of Emily. Her colleague is constantly undermining her, spreading rumors, just making her life miserable. Sutton has a whole chapter on survival, right?
He does.
So what are the practical tips for when a nasty workplace just persists?
Sutton offers 3 essential strategies. The first is to seek support. Find trusted colleagues or, friends outside of work who can offer emotional support and a realistic second opinion.
You don't have to go through it alone.
Never. You have to build your own psychological shield. The second, and this might be the most crucial, is to set boundaries. This is all about preserving your mental well-being.
What does that actually mean?
It could mean literally limiting contact, closing your office door, sticking to strict work hours so you avoid those late-night anxiety-inducing emails. It means not allowing their behavior to define your self-worth.
And the third tip?
Focus on growth. Prioritize your own development despite the bad environment. Look for learning opportunities, network outside your team, and always keep an eye on what's next for you. It gives you a forward trajectory.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Sutton introduces this layer of nuance that kind of challenges the whole premise.
The virtues of assholes.
Exactly. He dives into this potentially contentious idea that being aggressively tough could, surprisingly, be beneficial sometimes.
And this needs very careful qualification. He is challenging our black and white thinking, but let me be clear. He is not endorsing abuse.
Okay.
The context here is critical. First, he stresses that context matters. Perception depends entirely on the situation. For instance, in a really high-stakes negotiation to, say, save the company, taking a tough, unyielding stance might be seen as assertive leadership.
Not demeaning behavior, so it's about drawing a sharp line between using force to get a result and using force to destroy a person.
Precisely. And that leads to the core distinction between assertiveness versus aggression. Advocating strongly for your team, pushing back on unreasonable demands, that can be beneficial. But it can't cross the line into abusive or disrespectful conduct.
The intent matters.
The intent and the impact. He argues for strategic considerations. Sometimes tough tactics might be necessary, but integrity and respect have to remain the foundation. You have to analyze the situation and make sure tactical aggression doesn't become personal abuse.
I love that this rule is portable, too. Sutton doesn't just leave this in the office.
No, he expands it into the no asshole rule as a way of life.
Taking it into our social spheres.
It's a crucial insight. It's about using these same principles to foster healthier environments everywhere. Think about his example, Chris, who applies these ideas in his social circles, even with family.
So what are the key applications for personal life?
It really starts with boundary setting. It's the non-negotiable principle of not tolerating disrespectful behavior from anyone, a colleague, a friend, a family member.
And having the courage to speak up or walk away.
Right. Then it's about choosing relationships wisely. Proactively surround yourself with supportive people who lift you up and actively distance yourself from those who are constantly draining or toxic.
And the third principle.
Promoting positive environments. This means modeling respectful behavior yourself, fostering open communication, and gently addressing toxic behavior when you see it, even if it's uncomfortable. We can create healthier relationships just by being consistent with this.
Wow, this has been a really comprehensive deep dive.
It has. We've covered everything from the shocking costs of toxicity and the need for organizational enforcement to, individual survival tactics and self-regulation. The overwhelming message is that fostering a positive, respectful environment is a shared responsibility.
One that pays clear dividends. So what does this all mean for you listening? It means you have a structured, actionable insight into not just identifying the problem, but proactively applying these strategies.
Whether you're making sure your HR department has teeth in its policies, or you're just pausing to check your own emotions before you send that stressed out email.
These are tools for immediate use in building a better world around you.
And this brings us to a final provocative thought for you to mull over. Sutton argues really strongly for external consequences, for penalties imposed by the organization to ensure civility.
Right, because leaders often fail to act on their own.
Exactly. But he also dedicates a whole chapter to individual self-awareness, to controlling that inner jerk.
So if self-control is theoretically possible,
Should self-awareness make all these external rules unnecessary? Or is the rule ultimately necessary because we know our own self-control is, well, inherently unreliable when we're under immense professional stress?
that's the challenge you face as you build your own civilized environment.